how slight. If we carefully study his waist area, we will be able to quickly spot this protrusion, no matter how small. We can look also for the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the weapon protruding out against the pants, something he doesn't realize you can't see. This is especially visible when a man wears snug pants, or they're a little tight on him.
With a snub-nosed weapon as well as a regular weapon?
Sure, with a snub nose. Underneath the belt, you'll see the pants protruding out. Underneath the belt area, you'll see the belt coming and not riding flat against the front groin area.
Okay.
And if you're taking your time and you're visually stripping everybody on the street, or carefully studying where could a gun be on that man, these things will start to jump out at you after a period of time, and you can develop it to a finely honed skill. As I said before, I tell you the times when these movements are most likely to happen, including when you're most likely to see this protrusion or the upper body moving away from the lower. And basically it's times when physical action is taken. When a man is walking, bending, sitting, leaning, crouching, reaching up and down, walking up and down curbs, stairs, stoops, turning or getting in and out of cars especially. It is also at these times that the subject is most likely to make an adjustment or a security hold. Two other physical actions that should jump out at us as telltale signs that the man is armed with a weapon. When a gun is carried loose again in the waistband, physical movement of the lower body often causes the weapon to slip, however slightly, from its original upright position. When we stick the gun in, or the criminal sticks it in, it's stuck straight down. As the hip moves forward, or the leg swings, a leg stride, or the body turns, because of the unequal weight distribution of a weapon, the slippage will usually result in a lowering of the grip towards the belt area and a raising of the lower barrel area of the gun into an unsecure and more parallel position.
So in other words, it's moving with the body, it moves around, it slips, and that happens to us, I think.
Happens all the time to us, sure, even with a holstered clip-on type holster, but it happens more so when it's an unholstered weapon such as the criminal on the street is carrying.
Which most of them do. They don't carry a weapon, right?
So what happens?
Holster.
The holster, no. So what happens is the gun, well, as I said, the grip area, and I'll demonstrate to you here, the grip area.
I might tell you guys that is not a loaded weapon.
It's unloaded weapon. It'll slip almost entirely in the same way. The grip or upper area will slide downward.
Could you stand up a little
Sure.
bit? We'll be able to see it better, Bob.
Sure. It'll slip in this manner. The grip will sink lower and the barrel will slide upward. Mm-hmm. In a more parallel angle to the waistband, and this causes the man to get that back into the straight down position. So this is when, after the slippage, the man is going to make an adjustment to that weapon to get it back in its upright position.
So what you're looking at is his hand. You're not looking at a weapon, but you're looking at a hand, and that should be an indication to you is what you're saying.
Right. He's going to make the adjustment with the hand. Now, the adjustment will usually be made with a circular downward type of motion. By that, I'll demonstrate it to a second, but I'll just articulate it a little further. It'll be made with a circular downward type of motion, usually with the lower palm, the fingers, or the hand. And what he's doing this, it can be done on the outside of the clothing, or if he believes he's not seen or visible to the police or other people, he'll actually go under the shirt or the sweater or concealment clothing he's wearing. I'm talking by a circular downward adjustment. I mean, it's a quick, like I said, it's anywhere from the bottom of the palm to the hand. The hand will come into here, and with like a circular push, the gun will be adjusted, and then it's back into that rigid, secure, as he feels, position. So these are another sign that we'll have to look for on the street. The security hold The other sign that I talked about is when a subject will actually place his hand or part of his arm against the outside of the garment, holding the gun snug against himself. He usually does this while he's moving or sometimes even in a still position. This will occur most often when an armed man is running or when he's walking through a crowd or when a group of people is passing by him. He'll bring his hand into the outside of the garment covering the weapon and keeping it secure against it. Also, as I stated, when a man is running, the armed man running with the loose gun in the waistband will keep that arm or hand rigid against it, holding it secure in place as he runs. You can often spot this, as I talked before, the physical movements, when to look for it, but also when a man's running from a car to the store, running across the street, running for a bus, running up the stairs on a stoop, or I used to tell everybody when they complained when it was raining, because nobody will be out, it's rain. Rain is the best time in the world to spot the man with the gun. The reason being because so many people are running in the rain, from the car to the store, car to the house, to the bus again, or to get cover anywhere to get out of the rain, and the armed man is keeping that hand secure in most cases while he is running against it. So rainy weather is great gun hunting weather.
Well, you're talking now, Bob, about wearing clothing, loose-fitting clothing that you get the opportunity to perhaps see a bulge, but, in the wintertime with jackets, heavier clothing on, all of that kind of thing, putting a weapon in a pocket is easy to do, and probably the most often, they do it the most often.
I'd like to, if I could just mention a few other things about physical movements first, then I'll talk a little about clothing and modes of dress that we should look for, that should jump out at us as a possibility the man is armed. Excuse me. Some of the other simple telltale physical signs which we should look for are the obvious. Man pulling a shirt or a sweater down or pulling the pants up is very often a sign that the man is in fact armed. But also we should give special attention to suspects when they're walking, okay? It takes practice and careful scrutiny of a subject to sometimes observe the difference, but it is a fact that an armed man will take a shorter leg stride on the side that the gun is on. A man has a gun on his right side, his right leg stride is going to be shorter. Might only be an inch or two to 4 or 5 inches, but by carefully training your eye, you can pick this out very easily on the street.
Even with police officers wearing a weapon that way.
If you measured your own steps, Les, if we chalked them out while you have the gun on your side, unholstered, you'd see exactly what I'm talking about.
Can you demonstrate that for us?
Yeah, it'll be very hard. It'll be very hard for you to spot because it's going to be a short. It could be anywhere from, as I said, an inch to 6 inches, but as you carefully develop this skill, you will see it. Basically, the right stride is going to be shorter than the leg stride. It's a protective body movement, and because of the unnatural weight of the object in here, we take a shorter hip and leg movement on that side, which results in a shorter leg stride. Oop, I think I'm losing the mic there.
Okay. High risk.
In addition, his arm swing on the side that the gun is going to be carried is also going to be shorter. This protective body mannerism will range from a small difference in the length of the arm swing to an actual almost stiff or one-armed walk.
I might say, too, that, maybe this sounds like you really got to be sharp and you really got to be practice and be careful to notice these kind of things. But I think that same thing happens in nonverbal communication of any kind. I mean, that says something. And you're obviously just saying this is nonverbal communication about a man carrying a gun. It really happens. That's interesting. Go ahead.
Well, it happens so because, as I said before, sticking that gun in the waistband causes the body to make protective body movements both consciously and subconsciously that affect your whole total demeanor. You know? And these are things that we can look for. We're all doing it, not only us, but especially the man we want to see doing it, the bad guy on the street.
Okay, Bob, I'd like to, I want to give you the chance to add a little more to that in just a little while, if I can.
Sure.
That is nonverbal communication is what you're talking about, and we haven't yet talked about putting a weapon inside the garment or anything like that, and we will. We'll talk about that in a little while. But what you're really talking about is a law enforcement officer having to be very astute about the communication that somebody's giving you, that nonverbal communication, and I think that's pretty important. That's something that saves people's lives. I will get back and give you a chance to talk a little bit more about this right now. But let's move on for just a little bit, and let me turn to Gordon now and ask Gordon to give us a little bit of information about the person involved in these type of situations. And Gordon, if you would, we know that you're Gordon McNeil, that you were involved in that situation that we saw in the first part of the program on April 11th in 1986. Could you tell us just a little bit about your personal involvement in that situation to start off with?
Certainly, Les. I was the supervisor of the bank robbery squad on that particular morning, and I had been for the prior 2 years. Unfortunately, that day has become known as the most tragic day in the history of the FBI because, unfortunately, we lost 2 agents. 5 agents were wounded, 3 critically, including myself, and the 2 bank robbers also died. But to give you a little bit of history about what we were doing out there on that particular morning and how we ended up there, we had a series of approximately 9 bank and armored car robberies during the prior 11-month period prior to April the 11th, 1986. When we were out on the morning of April 11th, 1986, we had absolutely no idea at that particular time as to the identity of the subjects who were actually pulling the bank robberies and armored car robberies. They went to great lengths to disguise, in fact, their race. They wore ski masks, they wore gloves, they wore combat boots, they wore camouflage gear, and we actually didn't know until after 8 of these robberies had occurred. When the final robbery occurred prior to us running into them on the morning of April the 11th, we finally found out that they were 2 Caucasian males. A pattern, though, had started to develop in these cases. All the robberies were pulled in the same 30-block area. Always on Friday, always on noon, around noon, from 9 in the morning until noon on Fridays. And the one interesting aspect of this, there were so many interesting and tragic aspects to this case, was that there was increasing violence in all these cases, primarily in the last 5 robberies. Shots were fired in 2 of the cases involving armored cars. The subjects ended up with no money, but ended up firing anywhere from 25 to 30 rounds into the armored car truck as it sped off and left the subjects without getting any of the money from the truck. It's interesting also to note the violence attached to these 2 individuals, that they had actually killed 2 people in a remote area of Dade County just for their cars to use in these particular robberies. And when we decided to set up on the morning of April the 11th, 1986, it was obviously just a hunch, but it was an educated hunch based on the pattern that had started to develop, which I had just indicated. I often call that day the luckiest and the unluckiest in my entire life. I still find it truly incredible that on that particular morning, these 2 subjects showed back up to rob the same bank that they had robbed 3 weeks before in the same car with the same license plate. They were coming back to rob that bank for the 3rd time. Basically, what we did on that particular morning was I decided that we would set up, most of our manpower was concentrated on the bank where they had hit it multiple times, including an armored car robbery out in front of the bank. And I had fewer people on 2 other banks. There was actually a total of 14 FBI agents and 10 FBI cars, and we were spread out over a 5.5-mile period, 5.5-mile area. We had notified the Metro Dade Police Department approximately an hour before we set up, shortly after 8 o'clock in the morning, so that their officers would be aware that although we had no specific information, we were going to be on South Dixie Highway in Miami, and we were going to be doing a general surveillance at 3 banks, which were basically spread out over 5.5 miles from each other. I had a conference with my agents on that particular morning and basically gave them every bit of information that we had. The subjects had been seen getting into a white pickup truck after they had dumped 2 stolen cars in a couple of the robberies. And also we knew we were putting a lot of manpower into this case because of the killings that were involved and so forth. One of the armored car guards, in fact, was killed. One of the armored car guards survived. He's a quadriplegic today. It's extremely interesting that these individuals never gave any warning to their victims. In the one particular case, they walked up behind the armored car guard who had his back to the subjects. He was getting his money cart out of the back of the truck. They walked up right behind him without any signal whatsoever, shot him in the back with a shotgun. He went down on the ground, and they then shot him 3 more times with a .223 caliber weapon, possibly AR-15, M16, or possibly a Ruger Mini 14. The violence was continuing. The car that they had on that particular morning that we ran into them, the car that they had used 3 weeks before to rob the same bank, was taken from an individual out in a remote area of Dade County, once again out in the Everglades in western Miami, and that individual had been approached. He was shot 4 times, left for dead. He did survive, and we, through the robbery squad of the Metro-Dade Police Department, we found the following Monday that 2 individuals, 2 heavily armed individuals, had confronted this fellow out in the Everglades. We knew we already had 2 bodies in the Everglades. This was the 3rd individual, but he survived. They left in a white Ford pickup truck. So we felt that we, in all probability, had a very close probability here that these could be the same individuals who were in fact robbing the banks because of the stolen cars that had previously been dumped and the bodies that had been found out in the Everglades. But we positively knew that we were on to the right channel at that particular time, because the car that was used 3 weeks before we ran into them was the same car that they had taken from the individual and shot him 4 times, left him for dead. This individual turned out to be a very good witness. He provided what turned out to be excellent composite drawings of the 2 subjects. These were given to my agents on that particular morning. When we were out there that particular morning, as far as weapons that we had, there were 9mm in our possession, .357 handguns, .38 caliber handguns. We had shotguns, we had machine guns, MP5s. I felt that we had a substantial number of weapons. I felt that we had all that we would need on that particular day. I also realized that we were spread out pretty thin on that particular day, but we have to keep in mind that this was strictly a hunch. We had no idea that they were going to show up that day. We had absolutely no information. So we commenced the surveillance at approximately 9 o'clock in the morning. Incredibly enough, at 9:25 in the morning, Ben Grogan, who was one of the agents who died, along with Jerry Dove, they were riding in the same car. They called out on the air for all the agents to hear that they had fallen in behind on South Dixie Highway running northbound the black Chevrolet Monte Carlo, Dade County tag, which you saw at the beginning of the show, NTJ891. Okay, with my difficulty now, I'm trying to rally approximately 14 agents and 10 cars to come up and join Grogan and Dove, who are now falling in behind this car. Unfortunately, they were at the northernmost perimeter, so some of the agents involved actually had to travel 5.5 miles. They also telephonically advised, over the radio we advised, we had some Metro-Dade units, radio units in our cars. Metro-Dade was advised the fact that we had fallen in behind the car. No determination had been made then to pull the car over. I wanted to have as many FBI cars there, as many FBI agents, and hopefully some marked police units with us when we eventually did try to make the stop.
Okay, Gordon, you were the supervisor, you were on scene, and these are the events that led up to that. Okay, you and I talked a little bit about this last night, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what is your function after all of this started. We'll do that in just a little while, but I'll stop you right at this point right now, because I think you've set the stage pretty well for us as to what actually happened in that situation. You're giving us an indication of what you look at. You're giving us an indication of what you did. I think we better break right now for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to come back, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about what your responsibilities were and actually what happened after that. But first, during our break, we're going to run a brief copy of a videotape which is made for training. It was made by the University of Maryland, Baltimore County Instructional Media Resources Unit, and it's entitled Not a Sanctuary. I thank Chief Bob Nielsen of the Campus Police Department and Victor Alestia, Director of the Media Resources, for sharing it with us. You can get a copy of it by writing to Victor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County Department of Instructional Media Resources, Catonsville, Maryland, 21228, or you can call them on 301-455-3208. Here's a short message about how you can get your training videos here on LESTN.
Many law enforcement agencies have produced videotapes for training which may be of value to other agencies. LESTN provides the opportunity for you to distribute your programs to a vast audience, either during the intermission or at the end of each of our telecasts. If you wish to share a videotape training program, please contact LESTN Executive Producer, Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, Regional Police Academy, 3201 Southwest Traffic Way, Kansas City, Missouri, 64111, or LESTN Executive Producer, Teleconferencing Program, FBI Academy, Quantico, Virginia, 22135. We look forward to your expanding our variety of program topics and sources on future LESTN telecasts.
Okay, we're going to take a 15-minute break now, so please be back and ready to go in 15 minutes. I promised you one, we'll take it. See you in 15 minutes.
Stay tuned for more on the Law Enforcement Satellite Training Network.